welcome to the Revive Ministries Podcast. This is April, and it's a new theme. It's finding our community. And I recently read a short story about starfish. I thought it was wonderfully, there's wisdom in this story. I'm just going to share it with you. The story of a young boy throwing a starfish into the ocean. An old wise man asked him why he was doing this. The boy replied, because the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they may die. The old man replied, boy, don't you know this long beach is full of starfish? You can't make a difference. The boy picked up another starfish and threw it in the sea, smiling and said, it made a difference to that one. Sometimes, like I mentioned in the last month with the child being curious about how long and why it was going to take that long for the trip, it's very simple, the reasoning. The boy accepted the fact that he won't save every starfish, but the ones he could, he wants to, and he finds joy in it. And I would say that the innocence is inspiring. Healthy communities usually derive from some positive outward-focused approach towards one another. Can't be a very good community if we don't connect or treat, at the very least, treat each other well. And a lot of times I work with different populations, and I think it's across the board. When we think about safety, when we think of our homes, we may be watching or listening to this, or maybe even in our cars driving to work, or wherever you are right now. What is the price tag for safety? Those with families will say, well, of course, safety is paramount, which, we can only feel safe when the community we belong to feels safe. So in a tangible way, when we think of our communities in that way, it is, at least in my idea, very important. Finding a community is an active, an invitation to take action towards finding that community, whatever it is, and today I'll start this month off, as you know, Robert's Corner, sharing a little bit of my insight about how I feel some of these things may be helpful today, how it speaks to me today. Granted, it's subjective. It's from my vantage point, but when I think about Revive Ministries, it's about a lot of different subjective perspectives, and it makes kind of a collage, and through the midst of the collage we may be able to find something subjectively helpful for each one of us. So my opinions may not agree to you, or may not be as helpful, or they may be. Either way, we're going to proceed. I just want to say thank you for all those who are listening. Thank you for all the guests. Sometimes, this time of year can be busy, but at the same time, I do enjoy doing these, just sharing my thoughts on this. We think about communities, we think about another thing I want to share before we actually get into the disclaimer is that if we feel that it's a safe community, we may actually ask the question that we need help. So it's important, even if you're doing well right now, if you have a community that you feel safe enough to tell someone that you're not feeling so well, I think that's sometimes the best we can do. Disclaimer, if you are in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help immediately. It's not as new, but the 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline is available for those in the States. Wherever you are around the world, I encourage you to find that church, find that coworker, find that club member, find that friend, and ask for help. We mentioned the starfish. I think Coretta Scott King would be inspired also about this child's innocence of just wanting to help the one that they can in front of them. But she says it this way in her quote, and I like this one. I think it's a good way to start off when we think about our communities, the ones we belong to, the ones we're trying to find. The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. There's going to be a lot of biases of what that means. For me, it's not the requirement for those to understand each and everything that I've gone through, each and every reason I don't like or support something. It's more about how we can see past that, how I can shake the hand with my neighbor who I don't agree with certain topics on, because I don't define my friendships or the relationships I have based on them agreeing with me at all. I think it's very, at least from my vantage point, it's very unlikely that you'll find someone with the same opinions for the same reasons and the same motivations. It kind of takes us out of the picture. A lot of times in life, it's not that objective. Objective realities can be very helpful when we can see the big picture of the impact of something very negative. But when it comes to individual growth in a community that is comprised of individuals, it's important to, at least from my vantage point, to remember the individual. And the first one I think that has helped me is to remember who I am. A lot of I want to, thinking about this quote, it reminds me of a quote from Ronald Reagan. He said it this way: a lot of trouble in the world would disappear if we were talking to each other instead of about each other. I feel it's very true. I think it's courageous to tell someone you don't like something they did. I think it's courageous to tell someone that you didn't appreciate the way they spoke. The person may say, "Oh, you're being too sensitive," and I might feel embarrassment, but at least you stood up for something that you felt that wasn't done well for you. Now, granted, I think it takes a lot of bravery to be vulnerable, and sometimes it may kind of shape, at least from my perspective, from my experience, what value we put on our relationships and the friends around us. So if the person matters, per se, is what I'm trying to say, a little discomfort, are they worth that little discomfort? Sometimes when you're trying to put across an idea or that something made the individual feel uncomfortable, because in the grand scheme of things, when you do that, you're actually saying, I want us to work better for the future. I'm telling you this because I don't want us to fall apart, grow apart from each other. So I'm not saying for every single case, but I think the reason the person says that this hurts them, I guess the idea is that the hope is that there can be some intervention, some sort of change, some sort of understanding. And speaking of understanding, a major part of community is how we communicate and connect. And how has it been to stay connected? Oh, for me, I guess what I'm asking and will be asking to those who are coming on as guests is, how do you maintain that level of communication? At least for me, speaking for me, I try to remember not what happened or what hurt me, but who is this person? And if the person is superficial, or maybe I don't know the person well and it bothers me, but next question is, why does it bother me so much? And it may have nothing to do with this person, and maybe it's just something that he said that reminds me of something else. So sometimes I say my response may be disproportional to what the offense. So good for me to retain communication is to just challenge any discomfort. And if it does matter, or there's something, someone close to me that did hurt me, the question now becomes, is this relationship worth having the conversation in hopes to better that relationship? It's a handful, but like, are you willing to take the time to express yourself vulnerably, knowing that you will be possibly hurt or told you're insensitive, oversensitive, or that you're wrong, or the person becomes defensive, or especially when things on the outside feels that they're doing well. And I can only speak for myself. Those who are listening may be like, well, my family, my context, I can't do that. But I found a lot of growth in me in this area just by diving in and asking those questions. I don't think anything was wasted. I think I learned a lot about myself and my needs. And maybe the person that is wrong was me. Maybe my reaction appeared oversensitive. But I would never know this if I just push it under the rug. Winston Churchill says it this way: courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. I think the second one, at least for me, is the hardest. I'm on the podcast. I share a lot. I speak to a lot of wonderful guests. That's usually not the issue. A lot of times it's us, at least for me, in certain settings, to sit down and listen. Communication, obviously, we think about the obviously person speaking, but there's another action that's happening, and from my perspective, is being a better listener. I think David Spangler says it this way. I think regards to community and just regards to how that looks today or wherever you are in the world, he says it this way: some people think they're in a community, but they're only in proximity. True community requires commitment, openness. It's a willingness to extend yourself, to encounter and know the other. I'd like to kind of say it in a shorter way. Community is an action. It's a verb. It's something that we do. It's not what we are. Like, we become a community by the actions we take, or we become less of a community. We connect better, or striving to connect better. I never really feel like I've made it to be a better communicator. I think I'm thriving to try to become a one. And I think community sometimes is the same way. On paper, we could say that community is a number of values. There's 100 members in this community, or 100 families in this community. But when I think about what David Spangler quote says, I think in a way, just like you've kind of heard probably in more faith-based circles, or maybe you heard in other contexts, that love is a verb. I think community is the same. I think a community can be the same. It is a verb. We become. It's an action. I say, I live in a community. I think a lot of times we may be not saying we live in community. I'm living in proximity of other people. But when I say I'm in community, that means there's a lot of different intangible, tangible, ambiguous, more direct forms of that. Maybe it's a lot of times in Florida. A lot of times there's people who are older, of course, older communities, and sometimes just lending a helping hand. We get hurricanes sometimes, so it's kind of hard to put shutters on. So being able, if you're young and able to be that community member, do you need to do it? No. You don't need to help your elderly neighbor to put their hurricane shutters. But there's something there's something about the action of those who are able to help those who are unable that kind of speaks to the volume of what community could be, if that makes sense. And I just really appreciate what David Spangler says here. It doesn't really. I remember being in a church setting doing a sermon or something of that nature. I would say, don't look at the pews, don't look at who's doing what, and and that's a lesson I think is interchangeable, whether in faith circles or in the secular circles. We tend to obsess of what the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, but we don't know the context really. We just know it's different. It seems better, but I think when we are able to just be okay that some of those things may seem difficult, and it requires not just a sense of community or just saying, oh, we're a community, but actually taking action to become one, if that makes sense. This time, usually when I have a guest, I'll have them tell them about a little bit of the story, what brought them here, etc. Updates. So in this part with Revive Ministry, Robert's Corner, I would say no real updates in regards to the podcast, but I think we're still striving to get more and more guests. Info at reviveministryfl.com is on the website. It's an email address. I encourage those who may want to be on the podcast or just want to express anything or to share anything or ideas. But I really, I want those who are listening. If you feel like you want to share a story, I do implore you. And it's just for me. I have this ambitious goal. A lot of people may have the. I think it's ambitious. I don't really have a cap. Like I do want to have different guests. I love having returning guests. Don't get me wrong, but I also like to have guests I've never met before recording, and I find it reminds me of one of my friends in college. He used to say, you could talk to about anyone. I'm not trying to challenge that. What I'm really trying to say is that I don't want to ever get really comfortable in the sense of, okay, I have enough guests, I'll just I'm just inspired by hearing from all those who may be inspired to share. So with that being said, same on that front in regards to me, wife are doing well. Just doing, still working in the mental health field, and I really enjoy it. Working more outpatient, and it's been a great transition. And I've been doing this for some time, and I think it's transitioned well. With some of the skill sets, I'm still gaming. I do have my gaming platform, but at the same time, I feel that regards to work and life, I think the balance has been good. Beyond that, nothing else besides continuing the Music Mondays on the YouTube. Is just I still haven't figured out what that looks like, but I enjoy just expressing different ways. Trying to find more ways and more variety of ideas of expressing, having a safe place to express these things. On top of that, I just want to say, as we continue into this discussion on finding our community, I want to thank all you who've been listening, those who have been guests, all the support I've received. Thank you. Continuing on, I use this quote from Oscar Wilde. Smallest act of kindness is worth more than the grandest intention. I think sometimes we get stuck on it being that pivotal moment. But I think just like the boy who's been inspiring and actually started this conversation has been the story, and kind of it's going to be the story this month. I read this little card I got, and it was, you know, I think it was just a great, simple story that most of us can understand. And I'm a lot of times old wise men. Like, you're not making any impact, but the question is, the boy understood what the wise man said, but he also saw it like, he also accepted the fact that before even throwing the starfish, it was never about him. It was about the starfish that he could help. And in communities, sometimes the problems and the situations could be huge and enormous, but it's those little steps. It's going to your neighbor and helping them put on their shutters. It's being kinder when you go to a restaurant when the person gets your order wrong. It's being understanding when of different opinions at work or in church or whatever setting. Understanding that people come from different contexts and different subjective culture and dynamic. And understand that just because they don't believe or think like you, it's not a threat directly to you. People think about things in various different ways. I'm not saying there's not threats out there, of course. Obviously, we like to go in extremes when we're talking about these kind of measures, but it's more about understanding that you could still be kind and not agree with people. I think when we stop thinking that way, it gets harder to become a community because most of us are not identical in experience and in thought and in intention. But we may have things similar. I think about my family, I think about my father. A lot of times we could get frustrated, but at the end, what I begin to realize when Winston Churchill, I sat and listened more than I spoke. We're saying we're saying the same thing, I would say, but in different ways. But we're hearing it different. So communication a lot of times is soon, but doesn't not always mean that it's happened. Jim Rohn says, and I think I like what Jim Rohn says, and it inspires me to be able to be around people that may seem challenging. So don't join an easy crowd; you won't grow. Go where the expectations and the demands perform are high. So this is more about productivity, maybe in a job environment, but expectation or let alone maybe just demands may be higher to be around people within reason that you don't necessarily agree with. They may think differently, feel differently. Obviously not put you in harm's way. But I think that is sometimes when we lose hope or faith in our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, we have this idea of doing it our way. I remember that song, My Way, for Frank Sinatra. Wonderful song. But in regards to community, I think a lot of times the humbling moments in our life is when we realize that we need others to help us. And when we don't, and we try to do it on our own, we may get it says here from a Bulgarian proverb, the wolf has a thick neck because he does his job on his own. So sometimes we have a thick neck, we're not flexible. We're kind of fixed, unmovable. Like in essence, a thick neck, maybe not flexible to different ideas, different thoughts, and in essence, the idea of discomfort by being around those that don't agree with you has at times shut yourself away from community. So when that little boy was told, "Hey, you're not gonna save everyone," I think the one thing that was inspiring, such for the boy, was that he knew what his mission was. It wasn't to save all the starfish. He knew he couldn't, but he could save the ones that's in front of him. And though the wise man was right, he was not going to save it. I think there's something there, some wisdom there that we can learn from how we see and how we view what the mission when it comes to community may be. It may not be having everyone agree with you. I will, for one, would say it's a recipe for burnout. Being one who struggled with mental health and still does. At times, it can be frustrating when I'm trying to explain what I'm going through, because the fact of the matter is, no one will understand. No verbiage, no. But one thing I learned is that I don't need people to understand to be supportive. And a lot of times we think they have to go. I think it can be frustrating. It can feel lonely. It could feel depressed. You could feel symptoms of depression or sadness, or your self-worth may go down. However, when we think about ourselves and being mindful that our character is not static. Who I was and what my priorities are not the same as it was 10 years ago, nor should they be. I think I read some. I think that our personality, per se, is not boxed into some. It's. I've experienced that many others may have experienced, being used to the negative, being used to some negative habits or negative choices. So I've learned to understand that when it comes to community and needing community, it can be sometimes very humbling, uncomfortable. But one thing that's changed in me and has been changing slowly is that I expect it. A lot of these things may have been ignored, maybe not been addressed. So I think the notion that things will get easier with more knowledge about how people may respond, and I don't feel that way. I think now, at least for me, each conversation, each connection, they matter to me. And because they matter to me, I've learned a lot. I learned a lot to navigate how to connect more efficiently, but I don't know it all, and each situation is different. And with that being said, I don't ever expect it to be easy. I think I may learn more efficient ways. I learn coping skills to work through. So I think what I'm really trying to say, and I'm trying to not be long-winded in saying this, but community is not supposed to be easy. We ourselves struggle. Community is going to be sometimes hard, sometimes disagreeable. Now, I think the danger is when we try to lie to ourselves that it's supposed to be easy. The things that are worth doing are usually not easy. Usually something that we put work on. So And when I think about this Bulgarian proverb, when I think about this finding our community, it's an action. Do I want to have that conversation with that person who may be disappointed? Or am I going to hold it in and just harbor it and just say, they should know better? If the person matters to you and you want that connection to improve, that also is courageous, because most times we feel that expressing vulnerability, that you care enough, that it bothered you enough to share to the person that you did appreciate that. And when it gets tough, sometimes we try to make it objective. Oh, it's not a big deal. But it was 2 minutes ago. Maybe, I would say maybe, could we both be a little bit kinder to yourselves to say, maybe not openly in public or have other people understand, because no one will understand, but maybe be kinder to yourself to think and challenge some of these ideas. Maybe think and be kinder enough to forgive, but more importantly, to forgive yourself. So, forgiveness, kindness. I think when it comes to community, we need more of that, and less of, I know this better than you, you're a bad person, you should know better, why did you do this to me, you should, like, all these kind of statements are very permanent, and a lot of times it's understandably to be hurt. But when it comes to community, I expect to feel some or even more discomfort at times, because it takes work, it takes action to connect and stay connected and stay communicating. And when someone annoys me, it's easier to be like, you know what, we're going to have this nice weekend, let me just avoid it. If the person matters to you, you talk with them, you express it. Maybe not right away. Maybe you need time to figure out what bothers you. But if the person matters to you, I always try to find ways to better, effectively communicate. But I say this, not that it's going to be easy. It's probably harder. It's easier for me to say the status quo. Oh, this is just how it is. Life is just like this. But I'm not saying not to say that this is inherently the only way. For me, I feel when it comes to community, whatever it looks like to you, wherever you are in the world, what actions will help you get closer to what community is for you? What is important for community for you? And I just want to say thank you to those who are listening. As we wrap up, I want to share, remember, stay updated with ReviveMinistriesFL.com. It's our website. And like I said before, info@ReviveMinistriesFL.com is our email. And like I was saying, when it comes to disagreeing within your community, which in turn may be your family, however that looks like. I love this African proverb as we wrap up, as we say, before we end. It reads this way, from an African proverb: when brothers fight to the death, a stranger inherits their father's estate. Be kinder to yourself, be kinder to the ones closest to you. Community is not easy, but for me, I can only speak for myself, it's worth it. Thank you for listening.